coming up in our newscast tonight. Yong-chol, one of the most influential figures of North Korea's ruling party, met with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. The meeting is expected to help ensure the Pyongyang-Washington summit happens as planned on June 12. Meeting with officials linked to finance and budget matters, President Jae-in praised the progress made so far in creating a people-centered economy. He highlights there's still much work to be done to ensure more people feel the improvements. Candidates for the June 13th election and their supporters went full throttle to begin campaigning. The maiden national election under the Moon administration will reflect how the people rate the current government. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, coming to you live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Choi. One of the most trusted aides of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un sat down for talks with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Little is known about how much of the summit agenda was addressed, but it's apparent such meetings will continue in order to build trust before more serious negotiations can begin. Lee Ji-won starts us off with that meeting in New York.
In New York late Wednesday local time, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo tweeted that he had a good working dinner with the vice chairman of North Korea's ruling Workers' Party Central Committee, Kim Yong-chol. Pompeo said the menu included steak, corn, and cheese, and posted 2 pictures from the dinner. One showed the 2 shaking hands, and the other was of them at the table. Seated there also was Andrew Kim, chief of the Korean Mission Center at the CIA, a project Pompeo set up when he was the spy agency's chief. They met at 7 o'clock that evening at the Manhattan residence of the deputy ambassador to the UN and spent 90 minutes together. Afterwards, Kim headed straight back to the Hilton Hotel at One UN Plaza, where he will be staying for 2 days. U.S. State Department said Kim and Pompeo will have all of Thursday local time for their official meeting starting at 9 a.m., but the venue has not been disclosed. After the meeting, the State Department says Pompeo is scheduled to hold a press briefing at 2:15 in the afternoon local time at the Palace Hotel. Kim and Pompeo's talking points have not been made public, but it's widely believed they are putting the final touches on the agenda for the Pyongyang-Washington summit, how North Korea will denuclearize, and how the U.S. will guarantee the regime's security. Kim Yong-chol, who arrived at JFK International Airport earlier on Wednesday, is the most senior North Korean official to step foot on U.S. soil in nearly 20 years. To make this trip happen, he was granted a sanctions travel waiver as he's under U.S. sanctions for his role in North Korea's nuclear program and other illicit activities. While Kim Yong-chol and Pompeo are meeting for the 3rd time, watchers are keen to find out if Kim Jong-un's right-hand man will visit Washington and meet with President Trump. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
The flurry of preparations underway in several locations, including the inter-Korean border village of Panmunjom, is fueling hopes the historic event is on as scheduled. According to our Cha Sang-mi, the White House expressed optimism the summit will take place in Singapore on the initially set date.
The White House expects the summit with North Korea will happen in Singapore on June 12th, as originally scheduled. Referring to the working-level talks between the North and the U.S. to prepare for a historic summit between the 2 leaders, White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said Wednesday that the Trump administration is continuing preparations to make the summit a reality.
We're continuing to prepare for the meeting between the president and the North Korean leader. As the president says, if it happens, we'll certainly be ready.
Sanders also said an American delegation led by U.S. Ambassador to the Philippines, Sung Kim, has been meeting with North Korean Vice Foreign Minister Choi Sun-hee at the border village of Panmunjom. She said the meetings that have been held so far had been positive, adding that such momentum will be maintained. The 2 sides first met on Sunday, and their last scheduled meeting was on Wednesday. But according to CNN, the U.S. delegation is staying in South Korea for at least another day. An expert says there are several possibilities for the change in schedule.
One is that both sides failed to narrow there are differences in a significant way. So a lot of important issues are still on the table, unsettled, so they would require more time to get the additional negotiations. The second possibility is that these working level negotiators would like to get the specific instructions from home governments.
The expert says that the officials may be laying the groundwork for the upcoming denuclearization talks between U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Vice Chairman of North Korea's ruling Workers' Party, Yong-chol, on Thursday, ahead of the North Korea-U.S. summit in Singapore. 차상미, Arirang News.
For the first time in nearly a decade, Russia's top diplomat paid a visit to Pyongyang. He sat down for talks with Foreign Minister Ri Yong-ho and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Park Hee-jun sheds light on the significance of Moscow reaching out to the regime.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has met North Korean leader Kim Jong-un during his visit to Pyongyang, marking the first visit between the head of North Korea and a Russian official.
We warmly welcome your delegation again in our country, and I think that your visit is a sign of how much attention the Russian Federation and Vladimir Putin's government are putting into widening and strengthening relations between our countries.
According to Russia's foreign ministry, Lavrov told Kim that his nation also supports peace on the Korean Peninsula as well as the Panmunjom Declaration. After discussing bilateral relations, the Russian diplomat also passed on greetings from Russian President Vladimir Putin to Kim and invited him to visit Russia. And earlier in the day, in a separate meeting with Pyongyang's Foreign Minister Ri Yong-ho, Lavrov called for international sanctions against North Korea to be scaled back to solve the nuclear issue on the Korean Peninsula.
It is absolutely obvious that beginning any discussion of the nuclear problem and all other programs of the Korean Peninsula, we based our judgment on the fact that this decision cannot be complete without repealing all sanctions.
He added that denuclearization cannot happen in one move. Instead, there must be several stages, with each stage seeing a two-way road. It's Lavrov's first visit to North Korea since April 2009. His two-day stay comes just 2 weeks before the landmark summit between North Korea and the U.S. and aims to discuss bilateral relations and the fast-changing developments on the Korean Peninsula. It's also seen as a mission to keep Russia relevant in the flurry of diplomatic activities surrounding North Korea. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
After an abrupt cancellation and weeks of delay, finally the first round of high-level talks between Seoul and Pyongyang since the latest inter-Korean summit will be held. There's plenty for both sides to cover, but the main focus will be on following through with the agreements reached on April 27th. Oh Jung-hee provides a glimpse of what to expect during that session.
At the April Inter-Korean Summit, the leaders of Seoul and Pyongyang agreed to hold military talks before the end of May with the aim of lowering tensions. They also agreed to hold Red Cross talks as soon as possible on resuming family reunions for families separated by the Korean War. But the schedules of both these talks have already been delayed, and that's why it's expected that setting the dates of these talks will come above anything else at Friday's high-level talks. The date for the family reunions has already been fixed for August 15th, but it takes 2 to 3 months to identify and register people wishing to meet their family members from the other side of the border. Also believed to be on the agenda is the two Koreas holding a joint event on major shared dates. The first date set is June 15th. And as stipulated in the Panmunjom Declaration, Seoul and Pyongyang may also touch upon establishing a joint liaison office in the North Korean city of Kaesong, where officials from both South and North Korea will be stationed. Meanwhile, with Seoul's Vice Minister of Transport and Pyongyang's Vice Minister of Railways attending the meeting, it's expected that they will discuss linking the existing railways between the two Koreas. In the Panmunjom Declaration, the two Koreas have agreed to connect and modernize railways along the east coast, as well as between Seoul and the North Korean city of Sinuiju. The forming of joint teams for the Asian Games held in Indonesia this August seems to also be on the table, with the vice ministers of sports from South and North Korea both taking part in Friday's talks. And there's the possibility of forestation projects being brought up, as Seoul says the vice minister of its forest service may also be at the meeting. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in convened the second finance and budget strategy meeting since the launch of his administration. The Liberal leader called for full-blown efforts to spearhead the existing economic hurdles while responding to changes, especially those that come with improvements in inter-Korean ties. Hwang Ho-jun shares with us his remarks.
More than 80 government officials attended the finance and budget strategy meeting on Thursday, chaired by President Moon Jae-in himself, to discuss the government's fiscal policy over the next 5 years. President Moon praised the changes that have come about since the launch of his administration, noting that the average income of all households rose 3.7% on year in the first quarter, while the local economy expanded 1.1% over the same period. He said international organizations, including the IMF, have also expressed their appreciation of the Korean government's active fiscal management to improve the economy.
그러나 아직 국민들께서 경제적인 삶이 좋아지고 있다고 체감하기에는 미흡한 부분이 많습니다.
He noted that the household income gap between the top 20% and the lower 20% bracket has gotten worse, as have structural difficulties such as the nation's record low birth rate and the rapidly aging population. To tackle those issues, President Moon called for the government to further boost the three pillars of the nation's economic policies: income-led growth, innovative growth, and fair economy. He stressed that while income-led growth and fair competition are ways to make growth more inclusive and fair, the foundation for an expanding economy comes from innovation. Therefore, he called for tangible actions such as the reform of existing regulations.
성장의 동력을 만드는 데 있어서는 혁신 성장이 가장 중요합니다. 따라서 소득 주도 성장과 혁신 성장은 함께 가야 하는 것이지 결코 선택의 문제가 아닙니다.
But the highlight of the president's message was when he said the nation's economy is bound to undergo a paradigm shift once inter-Korean relations and North Korea-U.S. relations improve, once lasting peace is settled on the Korean Peninsula through denuclearization.
남북 경제 협력이 본격화될 경우를 대비해 한반도 신경제 지도를 뒷받침하기 위한 재정의 역할과 준비에 대해서도 미리 검토할 필요가 있겠습니다.
Responding to critics that the administration's minimum wage hike is one factor that drove the economic polarization of the country, President Moon, while acknowledging it may have become more difficult for those in the lower income bracket to find jobs, and if so, it needs to be addressed, insisted that it's too early to attribute the income decline of the bottom 20% to any specific factor. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Turning now to growing efforts to narrow gender inequality at workplace here in the nation, the Labor Ministry presented companies that took visible steps to level the playing field between men and women with deserving recognitions. Ko Ryun-hee has the full story.
Jong Sang-won has been working at a local company for 6 years. About a year ago, Jong Sang-won was finally able to take a paternity leave of more than 10 days after the birth of his first child.
When my wife was giving birth, we had to move to a different house. Because I was able to take 10 days off work, I had enough time to take care of my wife and settle in my new house.
Jong was able to take such a paternity leave because the company he works for quickly adopted the government's new policy on work conditions regarding childcare, effective this year. Along with existing measures, the Ministry of Employment and Labor laid out its concrete plans in the revised Employment Equality Ordinance last week. It included the provision of extra vacation days for couples going through fertility procedures, guaranteeing maternity leaves for temporary and new employees, and expanding the ministry's policy on equal employment to businesses with fewer than 5 employees starting next year. To promote gender equality in the workplace, the Labor Ministry on Wednesday awarded 16 local companies for their outstanding efforts in the area. These firms are being commended for hiring more women and supporting pregnant workers before and after they've given birth. But the labor minister pointed out that there is still room for improvement when it comes to helping women balance work and family.
For women to continue working after childbirth, the government should facilitate child rearing for them. This means building more public workplace nurseries and daycare centers throughout the nation.
Parents welcomed this news, saying this kind of support is needed not only in large conglomerates but also in small and medium-sized businesses.
If working moms take their children to local nurseries, they need an extra person to take care of children until they get off work. If there are more workplace nurseries, women will be able to take care of them on their own.
The ministry adds that practical changes at workplaces, especially those tailored for newlyweds and first-time parents, will greatly boost the nation's chronic low birth rate and increase the percentage of working-age population. 고륜이, Arirang News.
For over 2 decades, GM Korea's plant in Gusan played a pivotal role in vitalizing the regional economy. Today, it's officially shut down. Even with the government's help, the U.S.-based automaker saw no other way to restructure the cash-strapped unit's operations. Thousands are affected by the closure, not just the employees, but affiliates, subcontractors, and local businesses as well. Oh Soo-young files this report from the southwestern city.
General Motors has closed one of its 4 plants in South Korea, leaving an economic vacuum in the western port city of Gusan. The automaker's decision came in February as part of its corporate restructuring efforts, bringing the factory's 22-year history of car manufacturing to an end.
I came for my final day of work. I can't enter the gates tomorrow even if I wanted to. I just wanted to see it for the last time. I was here since the very beginning, since 1995 for about 23 years. This closure has happened practically overnight.
Of the factory's 1,800 workers, most like Kim have taken voluntary redundancy, 400 have taken unpaid leave, while 200 are awaiting placements at GM Korea's 3 remaining plants. Just 3 dozen people are left behind for maintenance and to handle the final shipments. Compared to the months of commotion leading up to this fateful day, the closure has been relatively low-key. But the impact of the closure is palpable throughout the city of Gusan. Churning out some 270,000 vehicles a year, the factory accounted for half of Gunsan's exports and a third of the total exports for Jeollabuk-do province. This means the livelihoods of thousands of workers employed by 130 affiliates and subcontractors that supplied auto parts to the factory are also on the line, and they won't be getting payouts or any such compensation from GM.
We had expected GM's all-new crews to be produced for the next 4 to 5 years as usual, but production was stalled after just a year, which the affiliated companies were not prepared for. After Hyundai Heavy Industries' Gusan plant closed down and now the GM plant, our local economy is faring worse than it did during the Asian financial crisis.
Other local businesses, including restaurants and real estate agencies, are also expected to suffer due to the outflow of workers. To cushion the blow to the local economy, the central government has earmarked some $20 million from its supplementary budget this year in order to support Gunsan's workers and businesses. Even so, many doubt the region will ever be able to fill the gap left by GM's departure, given the sheer size of the auto firm and Gunsan's dependency on its operations. But in the long haul, some experts say a structural reform may have been overdue and could boost the region's competitiveness.
They do have a lot of people who are very familiar with how a manufacturing company works, so there is some human capital there that they can use. And they should have good road systems, and if nothing else, they still have the large factories that the GM Korea-U.S, which they may be able to utilize elsewhere.
The expert also urged the authorities to act quickly as the plant is now shut for good, and thousands of local residents face an uncertain future. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News, Gusan.
Moving on to other stories now. Campaigning begins for the June local elections. Koreans will be voting for mayors, governors, chiefs of local councils, and education superintendents who will represent them for the next 4 years. Candidates and their supporters will be reaching out to the people in a variety of ways. Here's Kim Min-ji with a wrap-up of Day 1.
Making a good impression and getting name recognition will be crucial for candidates running for the June 13th local elections. The official campaign period kicked off at midnight Thursday, and for the next 13 days they'll be out and about pitching their agendas. One must-do on almost all candidates' schedules is greeting voters during their morning commute. It's all hands to the pump as they seek to win over voters and shore up support with Election Day less than 2 weeks away. The first day is of particular interest as it gives voters a look at the candidates' priorities. Most candidates started campaigning even before the break of dawn, staking out locations with significance to their policies. Take a look at the race for Seoul mayor. It's one of the most contested battlegrounds, having long been seen as a stepping stone to the presidency. Frontrunner Park Won-soon of the ruling Democratic Party of Korea, who is seeking a third term as mayor of the capital, started his campaigning by meeting with manual laborers working in the wee hours, thanking them for their hard work and stressing the importance of improving people's livelihoods. He spent the remainder of the day reaching out to the people in the streets, asking for support so that the government's policies can be adopted in all areas of the capital. Kim Moon-soo of the main opposition Liberty Korea party stressed the importance of economic revival, using the majority of his first day visiting merchants as well as greeting people at Seoul's local markets. The former Gyeonggi-do provincial governor also took time to reach out to young people, notable because the Conservative Party hasn't been the most popular among the younger generation. An Chul-soo of the minor Padamita party stressed the importance of making Seoul safe by visiting a police station and checking out CCTV installations in front of an elementary school. The former presidential candidate also got the attention of passers-by by arriving at a campaign site in an electric car he drove himself. With pumped-up campaign songs playing in the background and his supporters cheering, An shook hand after hand. Outside of Seoul, other closely watched areas include the southern regions, such as Gyeongsangnam-do province and Busan, usually considered strongholds of the conservatives, but where the ruling Liberal Party candidates are in the lead according to some polls. The ruling party is seeking a landslide victory buoyed by the high approval rating of the Moon Jae-in administration and the party itself. Lawmakers from Parliament will also be out on the streets nationwide until Election Day in show of support for the candidates of their respective parties, making the case that they know best how to deal with the local affairs in the various regions.
It will be important to campaign extra hard this year as the local elections have been largely overshadowed by a planned summit between North Korea and the U.S. and the Football World Cup also starting in mid-June. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
May 31st is World No Tobacco Day. The WHO pointed out there is a strong link between smoking and heart disease on this day. And here in the nation, the Health Ministry marked the occasion by releasing a new anti-smoking campaign video. For details, let's turn to our Cho Sang-min.
The Ministry of Health and Welfare released a new anti-smoking advertisement clip on Thursday to mark World No Tobacco Day. Since 1987, the World Health Organization has been commemorating the annual event on May 31st, aiming at raising awareness among the public on the dangers of smoking. The government's health ministry said that smoking goes beyond harming individuals, as it is also a social issue that needs to be tackled. The video uploaded to the ministry's YouTube channel depicts explicit scenes of how smoking affects not only the smoker, but also the people around. Data also showed 159 people died from smoking every day. To set up measures to boost anti-smoking policies, health authorities are slated to announce their findings on harmful effects caused by electronic cigarettes next month. The ministry is also mulling the option of applying graphic images of cancer-ridden organs on e-cigarette packs as well. Meanwhile, the WHO highlighted how smoking is closely linked to heart diseases. UN officials warned that smoking is one of the major causes causing heart disease and stroke.
Tobacco use and secondhand smoke exposure are major causes of cardiovascular diseases, contributing to approximately 17% of all cardiovascular deaths globally. That's about 3 million cardiovascular deaths per year caused by tobacco use.
WHO's mission this year is to promote healthy heart conditions and how this can be achieved by staying away from using tobacco products. Cho Sang-min, Arirang News.
Time to turn to Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, it felt like the middle of sizzling summer today, but I understand it's going to get even hotter tomorrow.
That's right, Daniel. Tomorrow is expected to be the hottest day of this year so far. The daytime temperature in the capital will reach into the 30s with an alert in effect for high UV rays. But we're lucky compared to Beijing because over there it'll top to 36 degrees Celsius. The fine dust levels are expected to go up again tomorrow. The dust will fade away in the morning down south, but in the capital it's expected to stay bad the whole day. Tomorrow morning, Seoul will wake up to 18 degrees Celsius. Daegu and Gyeongju are also warm but cooler at 15 and 13 degrees. In our sunny afternoons, Seoul, Daejeon, Daegu, and Gwangju reaches into the 30s, while Jeju is comparably lower at 24 degrees. Until the middle of next week, there is no rain in the forecast, but temperatures will linger higher than the seasonal average. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we could squeeze into tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. Thank you for staying with us wherever you may be tuning in from.